Need-or, sirens, need-or, loud noises, emergency, alert, Bally. Hello, I'm MBZ, we're here, back with This Nintendo Life, an unusual time, because Nintendo just decided to do the first Nintendo Direct in, I believe the stat is 530 days, Bally.
Yeah.
And they put it out yesterday, and we watched it, and we decided, Nintendo, they'd never like us ever. They just don't like our timing for when we record podcasts. It's just not convenient for them, to get our coverage, because we just have hot takes that are just too spicy for Furukawa to handle, So you know what? We're getting back at them. We're doing a bonus episode right here, and this is a bonus episode of This Nintendo Life to talk about the Nintendo Direct that just happened. I'm joined by Bally. Hi, Bally. How you doing?
I'm good. I was completely shocked by the news when you messaged me on WhatsApp. I couldn't believe it. I thought they were
shook.
I thought the return would be summer. That would be the triumphant return of the proper Direct.
You thought they would do a bit of a partnership with Keighley and his Summer Game Fest stuff?
Yeah,
maybe come in there
like that. So a mid-February Direct is a really welcome time.
It's almost back on track, right? It's almost, people were like, it's usually January, February, they do a big Direct for the start of the year, and it's almost like it was a blip of 2020, and it's like, oh, now we're back again. Yeah. Suddenly, Thanos unsnapped, and oh, Nintendo, hello. So interesting, and I wonder if, there was kind of word out from Furukawa saying, look, we may not always do Nintendo Directs, right? Like, we do have other options to do things, but the idea that it's been this long and they have decided that they are going to continue with it, I do think that they'll stay a staple.
We saw all those other options last year.
Yeah, totally. And to some degree that works, right? It allows all the energy to be taken up by a singular item or video game or whatever, and say, okay, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, this is the only thing that people are talking about for that one day, is Pikmin 3. Paper Mario also got a lot of spotlight as a result of that. I don't know if that sort of stuff gets more lost in bigger Directs, but I'd argue that they don't necessarily, because the big games out of this, stuff like Mario Golf, that's going to still get a lot of talking points while still having a bunch of other announcements around it, So I don't think that Nintendo Directs necessarily diminish the announcements within, and in fact, I prefer them just because they're more exciting, and you get a lot of stuff all at once. It's definitely preferable.
I also question more widely how much Nintendo even responds to people's reactions to these things. Like, It's very clear when Microsoft drop news about specific Xbox announcements, like, for example, Xbox Live going up in price, and then they U-turned within 24 hours. It was very clear that they are very aware of what people who are involved in the industry are saying about what they're putting out. And there's few occasions where you really feel that same level of connectedness with connectivity with Nintendo. Sometimes I just think they put it out there and they think that's a job done, and they don't look at any of the replies or what the feedback is on how they did it. They just kind of tick a box, right, we got those announcements done, on to the next thing. And I don't know, I'm skeptical that they listen always to their reception.
Yes, they are, as always, an inscrutable black box, which nobody knows what happens at all inside of. But you know what? I'm glad Directs are back. I feel like, looking through Twitter, people were still very mad, and that will always be the case with Nintendo Directs, that people are just like, this was terrible, I didn't enjoy anything from this, blah, 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 blah. And I totally get that. I totally get, like, the expectation, because it's been so long, and you think they're going to have this big blowout, and, I think maybe the worst idea they had was, like, here's a Numa. Okay, are we gonna no, straight away he just actually
here's Enuma, he's gonna just talk about the best Zelda game. Oh wait, he's gonna talk about the worst Zelda game.
We're gonna have to talk about that, but yes, I disagree with that sentiment.
It is bad that there are now like YouTube compilations of the come down of people seeing Enuma and then realizing he's not talking about Breath of the Wild 2. Like that is not good marketing.
An extremely steep climb to hype, and then just like the furthest drop down, for sure. Yeah. I totally get that, and I see why people were disappointed with it. But I also look at Nintendo, and I look at their lineup, and I look at the type of things that they have tended towards in Directs. And a lot of the people I see online who are complaining, I feel like they just don't have the certain kind of taste that Nintendo seem to cater towards a lot in these presentations, by which I mean a lot of Japanese-focused games that are now coming to the West, or JRPGs, or older games that get remastered, those types of things that they seem to really like showing off and talking about. And me personally, I'm always very interested in that stuff. But I can see how if you're someone who isn't into that, you look at this and you're like, well, there was nothing for me here, right? So, yeah, I wonder, though, if that is any different, because I just don't know. In many ways, I'm not sure what people want necessarily out of these Nintendo Directs.
Yeah, I mean, I think more widely, as successful as the Nintendo Switch is at this point in time, I still actually think there are fairly few franchises that have genuine, proper Western cut through when it comes to critical success, sales success, and games that many Western media outlets actually talk about. I still don't think there's a ton of properties that people will talk about. And because Nintendo can't put out absolute top tier AAA stuff all the time, they fill these directs with tons of other stuff that, as you say, I think a lot of people just tune out of stuff, especially around, we were talking about before, Xenoblade Chronicles, which is a big push for Nintendo, but is less picked up when it comes to Western media.
Yeah, totally. And I get that. I think Xenoblade has a hard time getting through to people for a lot of reasons, despite the fact that for me it is unquestionably like one of their strongest franchises from a quality perspective, and that's a shame, right? Because I think a lot of people are missing out on something they would actually really enjoy.
Yeah, where something as simple as Mario Golf arguably has more cut through, even though critically weirdly, it's probably not a better game. It's just one of those things people associate with Mario Golf. Yeah.
So I don't know, overall, how did you feel about, like, broad thoughts, Bally? What were your impressions as the total kind of bird's eye view of this Direct?
Yeah, pretty strong. Obviously, they lied to us through their teeth again, saying, this is going to be focused on the first half of 2021. And to be fair, it was focused on the first half of 2021. Yeah. I think they did a really good job of filling out a good idea of what's coming to Nintendo Switch between new games, new announcements, ports in the first half of 2021. And then they got people excited about a couple of games that are going to come at some point in 2022. And that's a really good structure where you're saying, here's new stuff that's coming now, here's new stuff that's coming later. And I think that's always those are strong pillars to lead to any strong Nintendo Direct, and I think in that sense it was really strong. But I do think there were obviously big games in the pipeline that we don't know about that didn't come up this Direct, and that's a shame. I think the second half of 2021 is still looking very empty, and I'm sure Nintendo never said they were going to tell us about the second half of 2021, but it is still surprising that we know very little about 2021. So I imagine that's what summer or E3 or whatever that time period is going to will be for filling out that portion. So I think pretty strong overall. There's different types of announcements for different people.
Yeah, I feel like Nintendo tends to, with their bigger franchises, give people a bit more lead time on them, right? Like Splatoon, I think now is considered an upper tier echelon Nintendo franchise. And as a result, they feel more comfortable being like, okay, we need to tell people that Splatoon 3 is coming, even though it's ages away, right? Even though it's next year, we're going to be like, okay, here's Breath of the Wild 2. Like, when they announced that, it's like, this is ages away, but we're announcing it. Versus, like, Paper Mario, where it's like, oh, by the way, it's out in 2 months. Or Mario Golf, where it's like, oh, it's out in, like, 4 months. Like a much quicker turnaround for those smaller games, because I think those don't do a good job of staying in the public consciousness, right? Like, you aren't going to be like, Mario Golf coming 2022. Oh, I'm just going to anticipate this for so long, right? Like, they can sustain the type of anticipation for something like Splatoon 3 versus, it's a Mario Golf game. Like, it's going to be great, I'm sure, but it's not the same echelon in that.
Yeah, and they have a good understanding of that. So that is something where I would argue Nintendo are perhaps a little more aware.
Yes, totally. I really like this Direct. For me, it hits a lot of notes that I am definitely into. I obviously will talk about it, but Triangle Strategy was the standout for me. That was just like sucker punch me out of nowhere. So, like Octopath Redemption, like, can they get me back on board? Because look, everything about Octopath, aside from its like structure and storytelling, is just best in class, right? Combat system, world, like, world design a little less so, but I would say like obviously visually just stunning. Music, some of the best in the entire industry, let alone the genre. So yes, and hopefully they figured out like grinding and not making it so I have to grind fucking 8 characters. And anyway, we'll talk about that. But yeah, some other cool stuff that I am personally very into as the minutia of Nintendo and their history. But yeah, we'll kind of go over it and talk about the individual stuff. So how do you want to do this, Val? Do you want to pick out things that you were excited about, or should we just go chronologically?
Let's just go chronological, and then if there's not much to say, we won't say much and go efficiently through the whole thing.
Sounds good to me. So you just kick it off with a trailer for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC, question mark? I think both of us were kind of going back and forth of, is this another DLC, or is this Xenoblade 3?
We've had the U-turn too many times where they're like, this is a trailer for a game, and then like, actually it's a character invitation to Smash. And so I think
you were pretty certain it was
very
Smash
certain,
Brothers early.
But yeah.
I was still being lulled into the sense of like, okay, this plot-wise, Pyra has disappeared, seems like such a JRPG plot, it's unreal, which is why it's really effective as a troll from Sakurai. But I think like, when I'm thinking, Xenoblade 3, it doesn't make sense because the way Xenoblade games have worked so far is they all take place, kind of like Final Fantasy. They're like a brand new setting, a brand new set of characters, right? So I wasn't thinking it's a Xenoblade 3. I was kind of along the lines of, Torna sold probably quite well for them. Are they just going to do another one of those? But that doesn't make sense. I do think that we will see Xenoblade 3 this year, maybe in the summer. But at the moment, yeah, maybe this is to build hype for that potentially, right? So it is revealed that Pyra / Mithra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are the playable characters, which I'm pretty stoked about. I thought it was going to be Rex and Pyra, because the way it works in Xenoblade is that you have a blade and their driver, and so Rex is the driver for Pyra. So he's the one who does the attacking. Pyra kind of stands behind him and like just stands there pulsing energy towards him, I guess.
Rex even says in his British accent in this trailer, like, I thought I was going to be in Smash.
I want to be in Smash. Oh god, fucking his... I really love the voice acting for Xenoblade 1. Xenoblade 2's voice acting is just not very good, and it's a bit of a bummer. It's probably the worst thing about that game, honestly. I honestly don't like Rex as a character. I think he's too many anime cliches all rolled into one. It's one of the things that detached me a little bit from the story of Xenoblade 2. Is like, because there's some cool stuff that happens in that game, but like it just doesn't stand up to the quality of writing and voice acting that the first game had. It just didn't have the impact with me. So the fact that Rex is not actually that involved as a character is kind of good, because Pyra is pretty great, and Mithra as well, and their kind of story kind of worked best for me, I guess, overall. But I don't know, remember when Sakurai was talking about Mai Shiranui from SNK and how she wasn't allowed to be the character because she just got massive boobs, and so, Smash is a game for good boys and girls. Apparently, when it comes to Nintendo's franchises, that doesn't apply anymore, because Pyra and Mithra, let me tell you, they're anime waifus, and many people will be very pleased that they're in the game. So
we've had enough anime sword boys. I'll have some anime sword girls.
It's time for them queens, son. Them anime sword queens, and they're coming in strong. I think that the way they work is like a Chic Zelda situation, I believe. I'm
Really?
sure we're gonna get a Sakurai breakdown of it, but that is what it read to me in some ways, because the movesets looked quite different. I don't know if it... So the other option, right, is that it's a meter or a bar type of thing, like we've had with Joker summoning his persona, and with all the DLC characters, they have a gimmick to them. It could be that Pyra kind of powers up, and then for a brief period of time you play as Mithra, but I wonder if it's a bit more fluid.
I would go with that just because I know that they took out the whole transformation at a whim kind of thing out of Smash in terms of like Zelda Chic and Pokemon Trainer. Like they made a point of saying like, right, yes, they might upgrade in a form a bit like Joker, but they're never gonna... It's not gonna be transformation that you can control frequently.
Well, they did do that though for Pokemon Trainer, because Pokemon Trainer's back in this game and you can transform at will.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
They took it out and then put him back.
Yeah, because they had Charizard stand alone, right? And then they brought Pokemon Trainer back for Ultimate. So who knows?
But Sheik and Zelda remain split. So bizarre. So
they do, yeah. Also, a really cool stage. So Gramps is like the different titans in Xenoblade 2, and that's where everyone lives, is on these titans in the Cloud Sea. And so Gramps is like kind of a smaller titan. He's like Rex's best friend slash father figure in some ways. He's just like a dragon that Rex rides on, but he's a fun character. And so you're basically on that really small skimmer ship that Rex has at the start of the game, and it seems like it's going around the entire world. So you're passing by all these giant titans, which is very cool. And I like that type of stage. It's very neat. So that was good. I'm excited to see the Sakurai Presents and have him talk about these characters and all the things that are involved with their movesets, explaining franchises. Sakurai explains franchises is one of my favorite parts of those little presentations he does. So yes, I'm sure that will happen soon. That's coming in March, is what they said. We then had 2 games that are pretty big in the critical / commercial sphere. Obviously, Fall Guys on one end and Outer Wilds on the other. 2 games that I think had both been announced for Switch, or we knew they were going to come at some point in time. But hey, they are coming now, which is good. Will we get into Fall Guys finally, Bally, when it comes to Switch, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's also coming to Xbox, and a little surprising it's not on Game Pass, or it might be in the future. So
could be, yeah.
I'll play it wherever it works best. I am skeptical how well it will run on Switch, but if those fears can be quashed, then I'll give it a go on Switch. I don't really mind.
Totally. And Outer Wilds, of course, you played that as well, Bally.
Yeah, you gotta play Outer Wilds at some point. I will say it's the only game that has ever crashed my PlayStation 4, so I'm skeptical how well that game will run on Switch. But
yeah,
I'm sure you might be able to access it on Game Pass.
It's like simulating a universe, right? So, man, I don't know how that's going to run. It looked a little rough-ish, as tends to be the case with these type of ports, but we'll see. I'm definitely curious about it. I don't know. When I talked about Return of the Obra Dinn and you were like, that was basically my experience with Outer Wilds, I was like, maybe we just are not here for this type of game, you and I, maybe it's just not our thing, but I'll probably give it a go at some point.
It's worth a go. That's why I would suggest Game Pass more than maybe dropping 20 quid on a Switch version. But
yes.
Yeah, one thing I didn't like about this trailer is I strongly believe Outer Wilds is all about knowing less when you go into that game, and that trailer, I feel like, revealed quite a lot about the game and what you're kind of doing in the game, when I would argue you just need to go in as blind as possible, because it's kind of a special experience in that sense.
Yeah. Then, really cool thing, which I'm very interested in, so I believe it was last year, and this was listed on Nintendo's releases last year, but it was Japan only. They basically decided they were going to remake Famicom Detective Club, also known as Famicom Tantei Club in Japan, which is a series that originated on the Famicom back in the day, that is kind of visual novel style, and is like surrounded by like kind of, I guess, Phoenix Wright-esque mechanics in some way, although I don't know a huge amount about the series. All I know is that it's one of those few characters in Smash Melee that has a trophy that still Westerners had not much clue about, right? Because it's just kind of one of those Japan-exclusive series that's never come over here or hasn't been localized or whatever. And they've done a beautiful job of making these games like very modern looking. The art style, the visual style of this is gorgeous. I'm very, very into it. And just from a curiosity perspective about Nintendo's classic franchises, Famicom Detective Club, 2 of those games getting localized is definitely up my alley, especially as a fan of Phoenix Wright and that style of visual novel. I'm very keen to check at least one of these out when they release, and they're coming out in May, so it's pretty soon. So this is what I'm talking about when it's like, man, this is one of the high points of the Direct for me, but for most people, they're just going to shrug and, move on with their day.
Yeah, I'd be interested in checking it out. I did enjoy Phoenix Wright last year, but yeah, it's kind of depends on the price, depends on reviews. I don't know, but it does look intriguing, and give it a whirl. Cool.
Samurai Warriors 5. It's a Muso. Switch for some reason has become the platform for Musos. I don't know. Shrug. Legend of Mana. Oh God, yeah. I mean,
I love Vaseline Musos.
Just my favorite video game. Blur on a screen at a frame rate of 2. Just peak video games. Legend of Mana, this is really cool as well. Like another one of those of like, oh shit, dude, the PS1 Mana game that they have completely revamped the backgrounds for, like gorgeous art style for the backgrounds, while retaining the sprite look for the characters. Like a really interesting match of styles that I think does work, actually. Like it kind of blends really nicely together, and I really appreciate them. This is the thing that Switch has been doing so well, is like going into that deep cut RPG back catalog and plucking out these kind of hidden gems to just give a new lease of life to. You know, they've done the Saga collection already. They've done a bunch of these, like the Grandia HD collection is on Switch. There's so many weird, obscure JRPG type things. I mean, even Moon, which is not really a JRPG, it's more of an adventure game, but that like Moon Remix RPG from last year, I still want to check that out as well. And I love it. I think it's just very cool that they're doing that stuff. But, you know, as I said, most people are going to be like, just anime, JRPG, moving on. So, yes, I don't know. There's a lot of these on my list in terms of what I want to check out. But, you know, just add it to my watch list and I'll probably pick it up at some point in the future. They did a bit of an update on Monster Hunter Rise, which, of course, is coming out quite soon. Looks like a nice Pro Controller with that as well. Pretty cool looking one of those. Cool. And then the first big game from Nintendo themselves, Mario Golf Super Rush. Bally, you're the Mario Golf expert here. Talk my ear off about Mario Golf.
I am hyped, and I am partially hyped because I've waited a very long time since the last Mario Golf I played, which was Toadstool Tour, which apparently came out in 2003. So here we are, 18 years later, and I'm ready to go for some more Mario Golf. It looks fantastic. I think visually, I think the characters and everything looks really crisp. I think it's got a really clean finish. I'm not too fussed about motion controls. I think it's hilarious that they've brought those back.
I actually love that they put that in there because, frankly, I'm a big fan of Wii Golf, and I enjoyed it a lot.
The swingometer looks like it's straight out of Wii Sports, where even for the button version, there's no swingometer along the bottom like there normally would be. It's vertical along the side. So
yes,
even that aspect looks like Wii Sports, which is cool. And then obviously you've got the Super Rush, which is in reference to like the running like speed golf, where you hit a shot and then run after your ball and hit another shot, and it just looks like a really interesting way of making Mario Golf a little more party-fied, which I know is something Nintendo always like to do, although I personally always prefer vanilla, so I'm going to play this like standard golf, button controls, no motion controls.
Why you got to be so boring, Bally? Why is this boring old man sitting inside with his golf?
But even for the boring person like me, they've got a story mode going with proper stats upgrades, and I'm really interested to see what that story mode looks like. Even if the story mode is duff, like I am ready for more Mario Golf, and I am super excited for this game. Like it's awesome that it's coming like June 25th. Like that's not too far away. And
even that like little hub area they showed you walking into and walking around, I just love that idea of having a space for you to like go to the golf club and figure out your stuff and improve your stats and find NPCs around the place. You know, it's not going to be on the same level as Golf Story in terms of a full kind of single player narrative. But and I was thinking about this actually. You know, to some degree, I'm like, oh, you're just playing as a me. But even on the GBA and Game Boy versions of Mario Golf, like your character was like generic boy or girl, right?
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings whether you play as some random vanilla character or a me. It doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, the me is just their stand-in for like create a character, basically. So it logically tracks that they would do that, and so. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in this. You know, I've never been one to pick up Mario sports games myself, just because, you know, whenever I want to play them, I would have played them back in the day at your house, and I didn't really like just playing them on my own. But the story mode definitely appeals to me. I like the idea of speed golf. I like the idea of doing online tournaments with our community.
I would love to do that. Just play some good old-fashioned stroke play. Or maybe even like a tournament with match play. That stuff would be great. And if you're keen to pick it up, we can play some online.
Yes, go head to head, which I will surely get slaughtered by Bally online at Mario Golf. But I'll put myself up for the slaughter, indeed. So there was another game that then got announced, which was part of the Taiwan ratings board leak, which had leaked The Great Ace Attorney on Switch, and so maybe probably confirming that now, because Tales from the Borderlands is coming to Switch. A lot of Telltale games on there. Actually, I was just checking the eShop, and the Batman Telltale games are down to like £3 each right now on the eShop. Very cheap. So I don't know how many other ones they need to put on there to have the full collection. I'm not sure Wolf Among Us is there yet, but I do know that Walking Dead is on there. I think most of those seasons are on Switch now, and the Batman stuff. But Tales from the Borderlands, take it from me, best Telltale game. I think Walking Dead is still probably the one that had its biggest impact on me, but when we talk about like how they've aged and hold up today, I would probably think that Tales from the Borderlands overall is the best. It's like one of the funniest video games I've ever played. But also genuinely great character writing and a really good arc. And I could not give two shits about Borderlands, frankly. So if that's something that's stopping you from being interested in this, don't let it be. I've never touched Borderlands. I have no interest in playing Borderlands. Tales from the Borderlands you can enjoy separate from that entire franchise. So yes, I encourage people to give that a try if they have not already. There's the Capcom Arcade Stadium, which I was a little bit confused by because they showed like this really cool setup for it with all these arcade machines, and then they were like, oh, but by the way, you got to buy them separately. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know, that sounded like a cool thing, and then now you're going to just make me buy Strider for £7.
It's a hard sell when you have stuff like the NES and Switch, SNES Online, where you're paying an annual fee to, play some retro games and like deep dive on stuff. It's like it feels like a lot to then go and buy something like this.
Feels like it's definitely appealing to that small but dedicated market on Switch for retro stuff who will just buy all of it and not really care about it, right? So they're going to make some money off of that at least. A weird one, Stubbs the Zombie, a game I've heard people talk about over the years that I never really knew much about, frankly. Originally,
so when it was playing, I thought, wow, there's like a jetpack and there's like a vehicle you go in, and I thought, that looks a bit like Halo. And then Jeff Gerstmann on the reaction said apparently this game uses the same engine as Halo, and I was like, wow.
Does it really?
That's what he said, dude. Yeah.
Well,
Bizarre.
he would know. This was a original Xbox release, not Xbox One, original OG Xbox, as we have to call it now, thanks to Microsoft's amazing naming system. I think it came to PC as well, but very old game, and it just continues the trend of Switch being like, I don't know, was this random PS2 game from 25 years ago? Yeah, let's put that on the Switch. Fucking who cares? Just about everything. It's all here, So Stubbs the Zombie, sure, why the fuck not? No More Heroes 3. I'm very excited for this, but also, I don't know, man. The visuals on this are a bit weird. It definitely feels like, you're talking about Vaseline earlier, that's kind of how I'm describing No More Heroes 3 at the moment. Is like there's a bit of kind of Vaseline going on with it. It doesn't quite look like an HD game. Maybe it's just the way they've been showing it or something. The color palette.
Were you hoping for more of a visual upgrade from the previous two? And it kind of looks a lot more like the previous two.
It feels so similar. Like, in some ways, people are going to be thrilled by that because it feels incredibly like this could have released on the Wii type of level of how much it looks like those Wii games. But the thing I really liked about No More Heroes 2 especially was it just goes off the fucking rails, man. Like, wild shit all over the place. You start playing as different characters, like there's giant like mech battles. It's just nonsense. And I'm very much here for the ridiculousness of No More Heroes. The first game is a bit more reined in and more of a straight ahead action game, even though it has a lot of weirdness. 2 went off the deep end, and it looks like 3 is just going even further off the deep end. There's a section in there that looked like a turn-based fucking battle against a giant like mecha ghost robot thing, and I was like, okay, yes, this is definitely, it's leaning in that sort of way. So I'm definitely interested in it, but I need to see some more unbroken gameplay, I feel, before I can make a decision on how it looks.
Oh wow, I thought this was a big deal, like day one, no matter what kind of game for you, but it's just not quite there.
I don't think it is no matter what necessarily, right? Because people weren't that positive about the previous, like, Travis Strikes Again, like the top-down one they did.
Oh, yeah, you ducked out of that one.
Didn't play that because people weren't that hot on it. But, Suda makes some weird games, he makes some good stuff.
Weird is not always good. but sometimes
weird is
it
not
is.
always good, but generally for me it is good. So I'll see how it shakes out. I do really like both those games, even if they're not in my like top echelon of video games that I love truly. I'm always interested in that type of stuff. So yeah, No More Heroes 3, we'll keep an eye on it. And I do like that they've got aliens, because like the entire premise of No More Heroes is like Travis has to become the #1 killer, and so the first game's about him doing that, and then the second game just like ramps up even more, and so you have to, it's all about just escalation, right? So the third game has to just, we got to go to space, man. It's like what Mario did. It's like, where do we go next from sunshine? I mean, it's just so many options, but no, got to go to space. That's what you got to do. Neon White, Bally, you just played Donut County from Ben Esposito, and just all of a sudden, here's his next game, Neon White, which is a first-person deck building game that like kind of takes place in heaven, and you're slaying demons in heaven, and the way it plays looks really fast and frenetic, almost like a classic first-person shooter, kind of like Quake almost in terms of its speed. And I don't know if that is how it plays, or if that's just stylized for the trailer in terms of, do you have time to choose cards as you go? I'm not sure. It's got wall running, it's got like, I don't know, a lot of bright visuals.
Could it be any further from Donut County?
I don't think so, man. This is a swerve.
It's weird. I'm intrigued to see what this actually becomes. It's like multiplayer focused, right? Or
I don't think so.
No,
I think
like
this is just a first-person
Okay.
shooter. It's like a first-person shooter, but with card game mechanics, basically, is what it is.
like Yu-Gi-Oh.
I don't know. I honestly, it's unlike anything I've ever seen, which is pretty cool, right? That's kind of what you want from the games industry, as always.
Yeah, let's see what critics have to say. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. It comes from indie devs all the time of like, what the fuck is, I don't know, what if we crossed over deck building and first-person shooters? Has anyone done that? Nope. Okay, ship it. So, yes. And I'm sure it's well thought out and well designed. Ben Esposito, smart guy, smart designer. Okay, so then we got onto the next Nintendo published game, apparently, which I found out after the presentation. DC Superhero Girls Teen Power. This screams GameCube game for £5 in a shop, right? Like, this is, you don't see this type of game being made anymore. Like, licensed 3D action game with a Cartoon Network-esque style. This is the type of thing that you would have gone to Blockbuster back in the day and seen that and been like, I watched that TV show, I want to play the video game, right? That's totally what this is.
This used to completely dominate launch lineups, like constantly in line with all film and cartoon and TV series. There would be a game, no matter what, in the mid-noughties, early noughties, like no matter what, you'd get all these games. And you're right that we've not seen many, if not many at all, in the last few years, and it just kind of stands out like a sore thumb now, doesn't it?
It really does. It really shows how far the industry has moved away from that style of game. That kind of, I wouldn't even call it AA. It's like A, I guess, maybe even B. It's probably more B game in many senses of like, this is this licensed thing. We got to make it. They paid the Warner Brothers or whoever paid us to make it, and it's coming out.
It's probably one of those things where the increasing cost of video game production, a lot of these companies just think, yeah, the tie-in video game's maybe not worth it. Let's just focus on other marketing. I don't know. Maybe it was cheaper back then.
It's just not really feasible these days, is it? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's more hard work to make something that's not even something good, but just generally it's
something that's
something.
mediocre. Even is just a pain, probably. Yeah. So, but the thing is, Nintendo are publishing it, which is a bit wild. So maybe
Someone
it's going to be. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be okay. Who knows? Who knows why that deal was made and what's going on with it, but it's coming out. Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville. So this was, I believe, is this Garden Warfare, or is this a separate thing from Garden Warfare? I couldn't keep track of all those games, to be honest with you.
I believe it's the sequel.
Okay, so anyway, it's one of those. It's a shooting game with the Plants vs. Zombies. I would have thought this kind of would have been on Switch already, but it's not. It's coming. Looks okay.
This is on Game Pass as well. EA Play, I believe, anyway. So.
EA Play, right? Yeah, that makes sense. It's part of their back catalogue,
right?
And then Bally, there's so many good 3DS games out there, like Fantasy Life, Monster Hunter Stories 1. Like all these games. Ever Oasis, right? Like, what if we could play some of these really niche JRPGs on our Switch. Wouldn't that be wonderful? What does Nintendo say? Nintendo says, none of you fuckers bought Miitopia. To be frank, none of you fuckers know what Miitopia is. So here it is. Put it on Switch now. Fucking buy it. This is a bummer. Miitopia, a game that came out, I believe, like in the dying embers of the 3DS's lifespan, especially in Japan, and then they localized it. And must have sold like negative 100 copies, frankly. Like, who in their right mind is going out and buying Miitopia in like 2019?
Did it outsell Codename Steam though?
You know what, Bally? Frankly, probably it did. Yes, sad as that might be, you're probably right.
That's the real game they need to bring back, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, even Tomodachi Life I would have taken over this, but everything I've heard about Miitopia makes it sound like just not very good, and very shallow and hollow, and almost like it's basically like taking the Street Pass games and just blowing them out into a full-blown game, but there's just not enough meat on the bone there, you know? It's like they throw you, they're like, okay, can I order 20 ribs? And it comes out and it's like basically half of it is just bones, and you're just like, I can't, there's nothing here, right? Like, I paid all this money and I'm not full. Miitopia just screams that to me. It just, I look at it and I'm like, nothing about this is appealing. I know Nintendo might think that, well, frankly, it will sell better just because it's on the Switch, therefore it instantly just has a boost naturally. But I don't know. This is not, I don't think this is going to go well. We'll see. But that is not what I expected them to announce today.
They're willing to give it a try.
They're willing. The other thing they're willing to do is finally, for fuck's sake, put Mario things in Animal Crossing. For God's sake, man. I had my entire house, my entire floor full of Mario items and Zelda items in Wild World from day one playing that game, but for whatever reason, Nintendo held them back. And I was talking to you a bit about this. My theory is that now that they've done a whole year of seasonal events...
They wanted an Animal Crossing vanilla year in order to
totally.
Clean it all out,
so that they could do all those seasonal things. Now, because the seasonal things will be the same, there's no excitement around them anymore because they're not new anymore. And so I wonder if they continue to do tie-ins to other things they're working on alongside Animal Crossing, which is one of your predictions from a while back, was that's what they were going to do. And it seems like they could potentially start doing that with the Mario stuff this year and then roll it into the Zelda 35th anniversary, have all the Zelda items come into the game, you know. Kirby game comes out, just put a fucking Kirby thing in there, you know. Like, Animal Crossing works really well for all those collector's items and, you know, especially kitting out your town now, just making the whole thing look like it.
Actually having a warp pipe that warps you across your island is
so cool.
Pretty cool. That's a good idea.
Great. And, like, nothing else has got me to jump back into Animal Crossing in a while. I think this might do it. I might just go make a little Mario shrine somewhere on the island. I like that idea. So that's good, and that's coming. And then we come to the cream de la cream, the best thing about this entire Nintendo Direct. Square Enix has patented their very own, the best name for a video game I've ever heard, Project Triangle Strategy. It's here. It's here. Boy. Okay, so everyone knows our history with Octopath Traveler if you've listened to this podcast long enough. Bally's favourite JRPG of all time. Is that still the case? Has it been overtaken yet, or is it still up there as number one, Bally?
It can still have the number one slot, yeah.
Okay, cool. I was so excited for Octopath Traveler. Might be the most disappointed I've been in a game in a long time. Frankly, most of it to do with the way that grinding and...
Everyone's heard your spiel. We don't need to dig up for this again.
I don't know. There might be new people, Bally, who just don't know my pain. I think they need to know my pain to know my elation, right? Because what we have here is the visuals of Octopath Traveler, the music of Octopath Traveler, the presentation, all the golden goose things about Octopath Traveler that makes it an excellent experience. But then we add in turn-based fucking strategy, tactics, my son, Final Fantasy tactics in some ways, which scares me because I did bounce off Final Fantasy tactics. However, also looks like a narrative that is cohesive with characters that can actually have conversations with each other. What a revelation. And man, I've downloaded the demo. I have not yet had the chance to check out the demo, but everything they're saying about this video game it gets me very excited.
And they're doing the demo with like the whole feedback session, and there will probably be like a second demo and more feedback, and then it'll probably come out, spring, summer 2022. So
yeah, I imagine like maybe May of next year. Sounds like a good time for that to come out. Really wild that they put out a Bravely Default trailer as well, and kind of just burying that fucking thing, like that game is about to release and they're already like, no, forget about that shit. Here the real Bravely Default people, none of those fakers over there, right? Because this Bravely Default game is not being made by the original team, because that original team went on to make Octopath, and obviously they're now working on this game. So a little bit of Square Enix doing a bit of a Titanfall 2 with their own video game here, and sweeping it under the rug to just get forgotten about, which frankly, given all the previews and all the chatter I've heard about Bravely Default 2 and also the demo we played, doesn't surprise me that game's not looking too hot right now. So yes, I am absolutely fucking stoked for Project Triangle Strategy, and I would not be surprised if fucking Square Enix just take away Project and the game is just called Triangle Strategy, and that will instantly become the #1 stupidest video game title in the history of humanity. It kind of already is up there at the moment.
Yeah, I think this looks good. Like I can't deny I am a bit burned on Fire Emblem generally, and I like my tactics more advanced war style, obviously. And this does seem like it is more RPG based, a bit like Fire Emblem, a bit like Final Fantasy Tactics. So in that sense, I'm not saying it's going to be bad. I'm just saying it might not be my personal cup of tea, but I'm very keen to play the demo. Obviously, I love Octopath, love the art style, love the music. I think you're right. The story of this looks really intriguing, and the whole thing with the scales and all that. So I'm interested in all that. I just think that when this game eventually comes out, it'll be too brutal, too difficult, and just not the kind of tactics game I'm looking for. But I'm going to save my thoughts until I've played the demo. And I think what also excited me was that they had this label like before it was revealed saying like the 2D HD, was it collection or just 2D series or something?
Yeah.
So that gives me hope that like there will be a more traditional JRPG after this game, whether they do something related to Octopath or something that improves upon Octopath or something completely different to Octopath, but still more traditional JRPG, but with this incredible art style, which I think is really exciting. So I'm sure you could expect something like that in two years' time on from this, because I mean Octopath was 2018. This game is going to be 2022. Well, I guess that's 4 years. So yeah, 2026. I think you can expect like something that might be more traditional or Octopath related, and that's also exciting that there's this label that Square Enix want to get behind. And yeah, I wonder if that label will remain Nintendo exclusive. We'll see. But yeah, it's cool. I'm excited, and yeah, hopefully we'll play the demo ahead of the next show.
Yes, I certainly will, and we'll probably talk about it next time. So that will be exciting. Star Wars Hunters. The fuck? This is the weirdest trailer of all time. It was like, okay, it's there's some holograms, some Jedi open the doors, there's a battle happening. Boom, Star Wars Hunters. Oh, it's coming out 2021. What the fuck is it? Who knows? Oh, by the way, it's a third-person, free-to-play online game. And then I heard later on that apparently this game has been on mobile for ages and is just like basically a mobile port. So fuck that, basically.
Yeah.
Could we get a nice, good Star Wars game on Switch? I don't know. That fucking sucks, man. What a weird thing. And then a really weird trailer, which is like, I was talking to someone today about this, about like how it was like verging on copyright almost, of like that orc is so World of Warcraft. It was like pretty much doing the entire thing without saying it, and this is not obviously a Blizzard game or an Activision game, it's an EA original, and it's in fact being made by Velen Studios, who made Mario Kart Live last year. Kartik Bala, who used to work for Activision on Skylanders, started his own studio with his brother, I believe, and so they worked on that Mario Kart game, but now they work partnering, I guess, with EA on an EA Originals project, which is Knockout City, is the game. And looks very Splatoonish, Ninjala-esque, I guess. Dodgeball style, open action multiplayer game that I'm gonna guess is gonna be free to play, because I don't know that it'll do well if it's not. And very interestingly, someone at my company today or yesterday was like, hey, so before this got announced, someone in Slack was like, hey, I've got some codes for this thing that's coming as a beta over the weekend. If anyone wants the Steam code, I was like, had no idea what it was. I was like, yes, I'll have one. And then after it got announced, he was like, here it is. It's for this game that just got announced. I was like, oh, cool. So I will check that out this weekend. I've got a Steam code for it. So I will jump into the beta and see what's going on with it. And I'll talk about that probably next time as well. So all this coverage we're getting of these new Nintendo games, you come here for the hottest news. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any interest in this battle? It looks weird, but
I don't know. Yeah, it's you got to be pretty special style of this game for me to get involved. But
yeah, totally.
I wouldn't rule it out.
I'm always up to try it, right? Like I tried Ninjala, and Ninjala has some cool ideas, but it was really thin as a concept and as a game. So I hope that this has a bit more depth to it, and we shall see. The next thing is the dream collaboration between Kodaka, I believe, who is the Danganronpa creator, and I do not know the name of the 999 creator, but they are making a game together, which sounds like, if you're into that style of thing, this is like your dream collaboration, basically. Like, they make a very similar style of game, and I've yet to get into the 999 series. There is another game, AI The Somnian Files, that came out on Switch a few years ago that I also really want to check out, but as many people will know, I'm a massive Danganronpa fan. I absolutely love that series. So this World's End Club looks quite different in many ways. It has a similar setup in terms of, it's a bunch of school kids, but there's platforming, side-scrolling elements to it. I'm sure it's going to be mainly story-focused, but looks like some big boss fights going on. Neat style, very much more cartoonish and bright and colourful. Not much blood going on, which is obviously the pink blood is a very signature thing for the Danganronpa series, but that is not present here. But I'm sure that this nice, happy group of kids will turn into something very, very tragic and horrifying, which I'm very down for. So I'll keep an eye on this and see what's going on. But yeah, if you're into that type of stuff, again, another one of those announcements, right, for my type of sensibility that a lot of people on Twitter who are like, where's Mario Odyssey 2? Are not going to be interested by this, you know?
Yeah,
Hades! I was very excited when it came on the screen. I was like, shit, man, I'm getting DLC! No, it's physical release. You can lick a Switch cartridge now. Get some cool artwork, soundtrack, I don't know. Physical releases don't do anything for me for indie games, but I know there is a big market out there of people who like them. Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. This is the 3 Ninja Gaiden games. I was talking about Ninja Gaiden Black on the stream when I was talking about it. Ninja Gaiden Black is the name of the re-release of Ninja. So they basically rebooted Ninja Gaiden on 360, and then maybe it was original Xbox. It might have been original Xbox that rebooted Ninja Gaiden. They did a re-release that was called Ninja Gaiden Black, and they did a re-release that was called Ninja Gaiden Sigma. So this is the re-release being re-released on the Switch in HD and handhelds, obviously.
Was everyone demanding this game? What? Like, it's just so random.
So, well, Ninja Gaiden, the Xbox one that was the reboot, was pretty well regarded, or at least Ninja Gaiden Black was it retained the really difficult gameplay of the classic NES games, but it's a much more 3D action game, and people really like these games, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about them these days, right? Like, they barely ever get brought up in conversation, but I think the people who like them, it's kind of like the people who play Nioh, like that series, Nioh 2, that are very Dark Souls-esque. It's a super niche audience, but they fucking love those games, and I feel like that you can say a similar thing about these 3D Ninja Gaiden games. It's really rare, actually, to have a classic franchise like Ninja Gaiden that translates, decades later into a 3D action game, and people are like, actually, they nailed it, right? Because that kind of happened earlier on for different franchises. You see it with Ocarina of Time and Mario 64, obviously, they're big ones, but Ninja Gaiden, an NES series that kind of disappeared for ages, and they're like, Xbox, let's do a 3D action game. Fucking nailed it, apparently. So, yeah, it's cool. It's a trilogy. There are 3 of those games. I believe the 3rd game came out on Wii U at some point in time. I seem to remember that, but all 3 of them here now, so check them out if you're into it. They did an expansion pass for Age of Calamity that showed what was in it so quickly that I couldn't see And I think it's because
one big block of text.
I think it's because they're embarrassed at how shit it is, and they're selling it for $20. And they're like, we can't show this for too long, otherwise they'll read it and realize that it has no content in it. We need people to buy this sight unseen and not realize that it's just a bunch of shitty content. I don't know. I'm being rude about that game, but a lot of people really enjoyed it, and new characters, right, is probably the main thing people care about for these type of things, because that's basically what it trades on. It's like, oh shit, Zelda and her Sheikah stuff, like that's kind of the coolest thing about the Muso series. So new characters is interesting. I wonder if they'll dig into the archive of older Zelda games to do that, or whether they will just go for some more niche things, maybe really old Impa who's just sitting there, and I don't know what she would be able to do. Maybe just use her mind powers to just melt enemies. I
wouldn't rule it out.
I wouldn't rule it out. And then we've got a couple of quick trailers of like Bravely Default 2's coming out, by the way. We know no one cares about it anymore because we just showed you this other game that looks way better. But anyway, and then another trailer for the Ghosts and Goblins thing, which I don't like the art style on that. It's not really speaking to me. Saga Frontier Remastered, another one of those like, hey, niche JRPG people, how about we just put another one of these on here? Cool. I wasn't too into the character design here. It reminded me a bit too much of the Final Fantasy mobile ports, which have maybe the worst art style I've ever seen in any game. The
chibi ones.
I don't know if you've ever seen them, Bally, but they put all the old Final Fantasy games like 6 and 5 and stuff on mobile. Just go look up screenshots of Final Fantasy 6 on mobile and get back to me and let me know how you feel about that, because I feel like you're going to be as disgusted as I am. Yes, that's kind of, they gave me a bit of that vibe, but not as bad, but still not great. And then we kind of get to the end here. Final shout out to Apex Legends that's coming out soon. I think it's March 9th or something. It's very soon, around the corner, which visually, like, boy, that resolution is just tanking. However, the frame rate seems like it's decent. So, Respawn have made the right decision to make it focused on having at least a solid 30 FPS. And that's good, at the very least. Yeah. So I appreciate that. I will check it out for sure. Jump in for some sessions. We should probably play a bit together and see how it runs on Switch.
Gotta get another win.
Yeah, get another one. Kill some Switch noobs, man. That's what I'm all about. Let's do it. And then it's time for the troll. It's time for the master troll himself, Eiji Aonuma, our best friend. Boy. Oh.
Because we're like at the part of the direct now. We're like 45 minutes in, 42 minutes in or so, and you think, this, whatever happens next there's a high chance it's a very big thing. And then when you see him...
And there's a high chance it's the last thing as well.
Right, exactly. And when you see him, you think, it's happening. Here we go. Can't wait. Here we go. And then it wasn't. And then he just... I mean, I totally understand why people are mad, but like, people are framing this as if they cancelled Breath of the Wild 2 and are releasing Skyward Sword HD instead. And it's like... No, like, Breath of the Wild 2 is coming and we will get to hear about it later this year, but that's fine, man. Like, clearly, COVID has impacted their development so astronomically, right? Like, do you think they would be in this position without it? But you don't really need Aonuma to announce Skyward Sword HD, though.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think that would have been the best move. Just don't use him, because he symbolizes it.
You think the better move is to just drop a trailer for Skyward Sword without any big, like, Aonuma on a green screen or whatever?
Yeah. Aonuma green screen is very Breath of the Wild in the last 6 years now. That's what it means. And
yes,
I don't know. Yeah, that was the wrong move.
Yeah, I guess they could have thought about it a bit more, but I think they did want to have him there because he's the Zelda guy, and he wanted to explain Skyward Sword stuff, like show the motion controls, how they work, talk about the changes they've made to it, and those types of things. So I totally understand why they do it.
Yeah, there's some substantial stuff in there they've done to it. You're right.
Yeah, it's just like, from a messaging perspective, I think it just hits a lot of people in the gut, and I totally understand why people are mad about it. I was annoyed because I was like, damn, we're gonna get Breath of the Wild 2, but I guess we're not gonna see it for a bit longer.
So do you think that it's almost certain it's not this year, or is there still a chance it gets revealed in the summer and it comes out autumn?
Man, if they are saying more information later this year, there's no fucking way this game is coming out in 2021. I would be shocked if it comes out this year, honestly. to me, I think that this and a potential Switch Pro are a likely thing. And if that is the case, then getting it in before end of financial year, which would be like March next year or February next year, is logical in a lot of ways, right? Like it would track. It would be good for them probably. I see it happening. I definitely see it happening. So we shall see. However, in good news, Skyward Sword looks beautiful. My goodness, I love that art style, and I think it's one of those rare games in standard definition that still looks really good because it's such a definitive thing they went for. You know, the kind of ability to see something in the distance that has that painterly, like, weird aesthetic to it that then unblurs as you get closer to it. Like, it's really beautiful, and just putting it in HD also now runs at 60 frames a second as well. Amazing, which they didn't do that for other Zelda re-releases, I believe. I think Wind Waker still runs at 30, so that's awesome. And they also have added button controls, by which they mean using the second analog stick in order to use the sword, which is probably the most logical workaround, frankly. You have to have free movement. That's the entire game is built around that combat, so you basically can't do it unless you have that sort of input. So it looks like it'll work just fine, even if people are complaining about, well, how are you going to do camera control? My rebuttal for that? Where was your fucking second camera stick on the Wii, motherfuckers? Like people saying, but how am I going to play Skyward Sword properly without a second camera? Like, you didn't have a second camera stick the first time. Do you remember that we didn't have one? Which, to be honest with you, they could do it a couple of ways. They could make it so that camera control only happens when you're not holding the lock-on button, right? They could map it so that ZR only gives you access to using the sword with the second stick.
Yeah, you could just make the second analog stick the camera, and then you control the sword with waggle.
Yes, you could do that when you're playing it on TV, but you can't do that in handheld.
Yeah,
right?
but that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not. It's just it's a clunky way of doing it. It's the only way of doing it, and it's cool that they've introduced the analog stick to allow people with Switch Mini or whatever it's called to play this game. That is cool. I'm still more widely skeptical that people will be like, there are large parts of this game that are pretty rough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been so long since I played it.
Like I personally think the sword combat is better than some of the overall design. Don't get me wrong, I agree with you, the dungeons are really strong, but there are some really clunky, like, backtracking and padding, and for me, this is the worst culprit out of all the Zeldas in terms of that stuff, and the 3D Zeldas at least. And I'm not sure that having this game standalone, because I think it would have been better if they had done the big 35th anniversary, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker, this rolled together. I think I'm not sure if this game deserves the spotlight it's necessarily getting.
I see where you're coming from. I think that Nintendo are very stubborn in the way of, they've clearly put more work into this than they did Mario 64 port on the 3D collection, right? Like, there's a different level here of dedication to making it run at a higher frame rate, adding in the alternate controls, and it's not much, but I think Nintendo personally distinguishes it as that. And I also think that Zelda games, especially this one, this is like a 50+ hour game. Like, it justifies itself on its own. And those Zelda games generally justify themselves on their own versus Mario games, which are, as a rule, much shorter and less deep experiences than Zelda games are. And so I think from their perspective, they see it as a much easier sell to a general populace, but also people are just going to buy it anyway because it's a Zelda game.
Wasn't there some rumor that, like, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are coming, and
yeah, I think so. I feel like that's still possible, right? Like, I feel it's possible, but at this point, I wouldn't put it past Nintendo just to sell them standalone, right? Like, sell them all individually for $60 each,
And are you surprised they didn't do any 35th anniversary branding at all? It was just an announcement in and of itself.
Not necessarily, because I think they want to wait until we're past, D-Day, otherwise known as March 31st for Nintendo, when all of Mario will die. Nintendo are very, very specific. Like, you notice the fact that they waited until Barrio? Yes, Barrio's Fury Mario Bowser's Fury was out before they did a new Nintendo Direct, right? Like, they have specifically, like, all our marketing is geared towards this thing, and then that thing is done, and then here's the next thing, right? And so you saw that with Paper Mario before Pikmin got revealed. You see it all the time with Nintendo. And so the idea, I think, of them wrapping up Mario's 35th so they can be like, okay, that's done now, clean slate, now we're going to start ramp up Zelda 35th. That makes more sense to me, that they would start talking about it later once we're past that kind of, that barrier of Mario.
Yeah, okay. We'll see.
Even though they're not releasing any other Mario stuff that's related to the 35th, I believe. I think all of that stuff is kind of done now, right? Like Bowser's Fury was kind of the last, this is kind of related to the 35th anniversary thing that they wanted to talk about.
Yeah. You think that's the case even if Odyssey 2 is winter?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think so. Because I think the Nintendo like to match things up with anniversaries, but, you know, Bowser's Fury got pushed.
They would rather delay a game than match it to an anniversary.
Totally. They did it with Skyward Sword. Skyward Sword didn't hit. Oh, sorry. Skyward Sword did hit the 25th. The one that didn't hit it was Breath of the Wild. They wanted to do the 30th anniversary with Breath of the Wild, but Breath of the Wild didn't hit it. So, you know, got knocked out of that window. So, do you have any interest in playing Skyward Sword again, though, Bally? Is there any way in which you would want to buy this re-release? Does it speak to you at all?
There's just, for me personally, there's too many rough areas of that game to be keen to spend that sort of money on it, because it's going to be obviously 50 quid. I think had it been part of a collection, and if we do a celebration of Zelda in the same way that we did celebration of Mario, then absolutely. But in the same way, I think you wouldn't have bought Super Mario Sunshine if it had been 50 quid. I think in the same way you played that because we sort of did it for the show and we did all three together, and that was a more reasonable price. I think that's probably a similar stance I have with Skyward Sword.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I'm more on the side of wanting to revisit it because it's just been ages, and I just adore that game. I think for me it's a lot more about vibes than anything else, and I love just hanging out in Skyloft and just going around doing all the side quests there, getting all the weird gems for the devil guy under the stairs.
And I'm interested if you think if it holds up as well as it has in your mind.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely... You're right about its padding. It is way too padded, for sure. Like, they didn't need to add all this stuff because it's a lot of, like, reusing of the spaces, and I think they do it in clever ways for the most part.
Like flooding it and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, especially the end of the game, that stuff was unnecessary, of like going back to the mountain where you've lost all your items, do a stealth sequence. That sort of stuff is where I'm like, okay, let's just wrap it up here, you know? But I did like the fact that the three areas existed and, you know, you go back to them for different dungeons, and you know, the backtracking stuff I actually think is really good in this game because, like, each area, as they kind of talked about before the game came out, is like a dungeon on its own, right? Like, you go through an area, unlock shortcuts, then you can get back to that space much faster, and just, I really like the art style. I think it just holds up tremendously and just looks gorgeous now as well. So I am more likely... For me, this is similar to Xenoblade, right? Like, it's just one of my favorite games, and I would like an excuse to replay it, just because we don't do that often enough. It's just, especially with big games, like, the commitment to going back and playing a big game again is large. It's a big barrier to get across. So I think the excuse of having a brand new release of it is something that sways me a bit more towards it. So, but we'll see. There's always potential that it'll come to July and I'll be busy playing something else and I won't want to get to it. I'll wait for it to drop in price, which it never will because it's a Nintendo first-party game. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Cool. Well, there's one more thing to talk about, Bally, the big final closer. And I'm not going to say I'm disappointed that it's Splatoon 3, but I'm maybe a little disappointed that it's Splatoon 3 because I think the setup is so cool. Like, this trailer opens with an inkling in a desert, like with a fucking scar. It's like fucking Master Chief in the Halo 5 trailer. It's like there's this hooded figure in the desert, and then it reveals that it's Master Chief, and it's like, oh, okay, we're in like fucking post-apocalypse where France has died, the Eiffel Tower is upside down.
With an upturned Eiffel Tower.
And you have a little buddy guy next to you who you can kit out as well. and it starts showing like side-scrolling walking as the character that looks like gameplay, and I'm like, oh shit, dude, we're getting like a narrative single-player Splatoon thing that's not necessarily going to be a shooter and maybe a spin-off. I was very excited because it cannot stop me shutting up about doing spin-offs of Splatoon. Like, Nintendo, why are you not doing them? Do more spin-offs for Splatoon. And then it's Splatoon 3. And they show like, okay, we're doing more fighting in arenas. And I'm like, it's really good. Like, I love Splatoon. It's a fantastic franchise. I need this one to break away and not become another iterative Nintendo franchise. We have a lot of those. I want Splatoon to be something that continues to evolve and be different and just inject a bit more something that I haven't seen before, right? And I think we're getting there with the tone of this so far and what we've seen, but I need a bit more. And hopefully we will get more. Like, I'm hopeful about this game. I'm hopeful that it won't just be it's Splatoon 2 but with more maps and with more weapons, because so often with these types of games, when it comes to shooters, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, I think when Splatoon 2 came out, I think we were both excited. I very much enjoyed that game. I enjoyed the single player. I thought the additions of Salmon Run were really cool, as much as I didn't really get fully invested in them. But I felt when I was done with Splatoon 2, I felt, well, I've had my fill of Splatoon again, and yes, there were some new things, but the game wasn't like fundamentally any different to the first game. And you're right, the tone of this trailer is arguably the most exciting thing. It's like, where's this going? Is this a spin-off? The fact it's not a spin-off and it is Splatoon 3, I agree, is disappointing, but hopefully that tone is represented in, say, an interesting single-player aspect that can hopefully fix stuff like the life system, like you've mentioned before, and things like that. So, like, I agree. I'm hopeful because Splatoon is very valuable to them. I think they don't want Splatoon to become iterative. I think they want it to be, new in a Nintendo sense, because they love the word new. And I think they maybe think Splatoon 2 was new enough, so that maybe concerns me a bit. But I think this game could be onto a winner. And yeah, I think the disappointment is that this is the first Nintendo Direct since, autumn 2019, and we know that Breath of the Wild 2 is in the pipeline. We know that potentially 3D Mario, whether that's Odyssey 2 or something else, is potentially in the pipeline as well. And it's just like, you think those are the absolute top of the tower when it comes to Nintendo things. And Splatoon is up there too for many people. It maybe just isn't quite up there for me right now personally. And I think Splatoon 3, in the wider scheme of things, is quite predictable. Like, I think before the end of the Switch's life cycle, I think we would have bet on there being a Splatoon 3. So
yeah, for
here
sure.
it is. It's going to come 2022. I'm excited for it, but it's not Mario Odyssey 2, and I think that is maybe the one thing that I was just like, if that happened, I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird because Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2 was like a 2-year turnaround. And yeah, I felt more excited with 2 years turnaround to get a new Splatoon than I do with what is going to be 5 years turnaround.
Yeah, that's wild. That's going to be 5 years, but it does feel like we just played Splatoon 2, and I don't feel massively ready yet for Splatoon 3, but I'm sure they're going to show me stuff that makes me feel more ready. And we should jump back into Splatoon 2, like it's still a really great game, and I want to play more of it.
People are just very good at that now, so
that's
I'm often
the
scared
problem,
of that community because they are savage. Great, well that's it. That's the Nintendo Direct. No one last thing, nothing like that. But I think overall, we have a better lay of the land of what's going on for Nintendo in the next few months, at the very least. The second half of this year is still completely blank and unknown, and to some degree that's quite good, because it means that they probably have a lot of other stuff that they are holding for, as you mentioned, potential summer E3 adjacent Direct that could be like, and here's Mario Odyssey 2, and here's footage for Breath of the Wild, even though it's probably coming next year. That would satisfy a lot more people, I think.
Yeah. If the grand plan is Odyssey 2 reveal in summer, coming out holiday 2021, and Breath of the Wild 2 is spring 2022, that's still very possible, and that is very exciting. We're just not quite there yet, because next year could have Breath of the Wild 2, Splatoon 3, Project, what's it called? Triangle Strategy. And potentially more. Who knows? Like, I think the other one that's like absolute top tier and that I am personally very excited for when it eventually comes, because it's been such a long time since an original game, is Mario Kart 9. And I think that's maybe... I just think if you look at the top 10 selling Nintendo Switch games, I feel like we're going to get sequels to every single one of those games. And it's just a matter of time before the end of the life cycle that we'll get sequels to those. And Splatoon is one of those, I believe. I think it's sitting at number 9 or is it number 12? It's
definitely over 10 million sales total.
Yeah, it's sold really big numbers, so it's very predictable. We're going to get more Splatoon, so looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So yeah, that is going to do us for this bonus emergency episode of this Nintendo Live. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back in a week's time for the next episode. So we won't do all our usual plugs and things. We'll just get on out of here. But look forward to that, and we'll I'm sure be talking about some of the stuff from this as well there, especially the triangle strategy and how complicated it is. And I'm excited to discuss that. So we'll see you very soon, and bye-bye.